Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us, and welcome to the SSF Romcast Season 8. If you've seen us before, it's going to change a little bit. You may be, if you're watching us, seeing a little face that's not normally here, but we will explain that in a moment. I am, as always, Jessica Haynes, and joined by my lovely co-host.
Emma Jackson. Hello. Yes, so we have a guest. We have Desiree Niccoli, who's here with us to talk about her book, Untethering Dark. You may recognize her name from when we did a Christmas special way back in
In the day,
2021, um, where we were exploring like explosion of monster
the
romance
monsters
onto the
come in.
scene. It was really becoming big, and we wanted to. I think Jess was a bit more familiar with it than I was, but I was being brought into the fold. And we covered lots of amazing novellas, and Given to the Ghoul was featured in that as well. But now Desiree's here with us to talk about Untethering Dark, which is with Carina Press. And I'm not going to ask you the usual question, which is, what's your book about? Because as a writer as well, I hate that question. I'm like, it's about 16 million things that I tried to
Yes.
think about, and now you want me to distill it down to this. Um, but who do you think your book would most appeal to? Who's the ideal reader? What are they looking for? Why is it this book?
So this is meant for the monster lovers, the
Mhm.
supporters of women's rights and wrongs, readers who love dark fairy tale settings, especially when they're tailor-made for adults with adult content. Also lovers of like a scary Yuletide Christmas feel, witches, cute goats, and tea.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like the folkloric side, like really that darkness of Christmas time stories, because
Mm.
they've got that, and that's like part of fairy tales anyway, isn't it? When you look at fairy tales, they tend to be a bit dark, really, at their heart. And you get that a lot with Christmas stories as well, and that two sides. People love a spooky story at
Mm.
Christmas. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think it's just because it's so dark and it's cold, like the days are so
Yeah.
short.
Hmm.
And I mean, for us now with like modern heating and conveniences, like that's not necessarily as much of a like we don't necessarily stress about winter, but like for
Hmm.
people as, little as 100, 200 years ago, it's like, am I going to make it through the winter? Is my
Yeah.
family? Do I have enough food? Do I have enough fuel for my fires
Hmm.
to keep us warm? Like death is never far away.
Hmm.
So I think, that has a big part to play with why this time of year, even for a holiday or a season that has become very cheerful and
Yeah.
happy and about family and closeness, um, there's also like a darker underpinning to it all.
Yeah,
And then,
definitely.
of course, like when you hear the wind howling outside or
Yeah.
like a branch tapping on your window. Like,
Yes.
is it the wind? Is it a tree branch?
Well,
Or
there's
is
that
it a
nice
claw?
thing, yeah, about like having that, but being inside and being cozy and safe so that you can indulge in the scariness as well. It's so
Yeah.
lovely to read a book and it be lashing with rain outside and you don't have to go out there,
Mm.
and you can
Yeah.
just dive into your story. Yeah.
Covering
Yeah.
yourself with a blanket covers everything, doesn't it? That's
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
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 The monsters can't get your
Don't, yeah.
toes unless you want them to.
Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah,
And that's what
jumping into
Astrid's doing. Oh,
yeah.
sorry. I was
No,
just
no, no,
gonna
carry on,
say
carry
real
on.
quick that's what Astrid's doing in the opening chapter of Untethering
Yeah.
Dark. She's inside knitting, having a cup of
Yeah.
tea. The fire is crackling in her hearth, and the monstrous love interest, Guderiks, is outside eating
Yeah.
people. And she's just
Yeah.
like listening to their screaming, and she's just
Yeah.
Well, I tried to warn them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, this is it. I love that
play
about her. She was
stupid
like,
games, win stupid prizes.
there's
Yeah.
rules, you know.
Seriously, the
Don't
amount of
follow them.
messages we've put back, and I could say I'm trying not to jump the gun with the stuff that I've read. Like I want to say that bit now, but I've got to leave
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so as Emma mentioned, kind of your first book was self-published, and this is kind of one of the first traditionally published monster books that was kind of out there. So how was the editing process for the traditional publisher compared to the self-publishing? And did you find a lot of negotiating on the moral actions with the monsters and the morality of it all?
Actually, no.
Oh,
And I did not have to negotiate a lot. The whole editing process with Carina Press, which is an imprint of Harlequin, um, was actually really great. Like, I absolutely adore my editor. They're brilliant. Um, they only wanted to enhance what was already there. So, like, all the viciousness, the bloodthirstiness, the slightly unhinged nature of the story. Um, None of that, like, at no point did my editor, John Jacobson, ever want to try and tame either the story or the characters. It was more about enhancing like character emotions and motivations, crystallizing just like all the little layers, like making sure it all came together.
mm,
Yeah, there was in no point that
that's brilliant.
like they said
Yeah.
that like, oh, claws are too long or fangs are too whatever, or like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, like Goodreads when I submitted uh well, my agent and I submitted Untethering Dark, like how Goodreads was then is how he is now.
Brilliant.
Um
That's cool.
I
Yeah,
love it.
that's surprising. Like it's a
yeah,
lovely surprise that that's the case because you feel like sometimes in traditional publishing they might be like, well, how can we make this appeal to more people? We don't want to alienate anyone by,
yeah,
like Astrid is bloodthirsty in her own right.
yeah,
You
Yeah.
know, she's becoming a hag.
yeah.
I love that journey that she's on
Yeah.
personally. Um, and she's not
But
apologetic about
no,
vengeance, you know.
No, no. Yeah.
It's
no.
Is there
brilliant.
two more axe throwing in this? So should we have more or less axe throwing? All the axes.
All the axe throwing. Yeah.
All the axe throwing.
Yeah.
But
And the
I'm glad you
punishment.
asked this question because I was really, when we were going on submission with this book, that was at the forefront of my
Yeah.
mind is like how, like, I was very hopeful that because Monster Romance has taken off and, even we went on submission back in 2023, like it was well established. It was breaking into mainstream audiences. It was doing really well on its own. Like books
Mm.
were like Monster Romance books were coming into like Barnes and Nobles and other bookstores. So like it created such a serious presence for herself. And then like Ruby Dixon, I think with Berkeley, an imprint of Berkeley,
Yeah.
she came out
Hmm.
with Full Moon Rising. And then now this year we're coming out with like Tusk Love by Thea Guzman. And then I think Anna Gire is got like a alien one coming out that's through Source Books, maybe. I might,
Mm.
but another trad pub.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like they're paying attention, and that's really, really cool. But like, you know, just with every subgenre of romance, like there's reader expectation. So I really didn't want to go on sub with this book and they try to turn it into a
Yeah.
paranormal romance, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
market it as a monster romance. So like I had to talk with my agent. I kind of like explained like, okay, this is what monster romance readers are expecting versus what, we can do in a
Yeah.
paranormal romance. So
Hmm.
that like when we got editor feedback, um, she knew where I stood and like what was important to me with regards to
Mm.
an offer or, revise and resubmit requests.
That's it. It's so you can have the confidence that the publisher and the editor really understand the audience that and are gonna really appreciate that. Because I feel like we read Bride for one of our last seasons.
We
And
did.
I think they pushed a little bit that it was Omegaverse. And like there
Yes.
was a lot of discrepancy between understanding what, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Is it
people who
though?
read Omegaverse were like, this is not
Yes.
Omegaverse. And I'm really disappointed. And then other people were like, holy hell, what is this? Because they'd never come across anything like that. But
Yeah.
obviously, for she's such an established author, I guess it was kind of tricky for it. It didn't matter too much what they said about it because she's got such a massive readership. But when, like you say, you're breaking ground into it, you know, it is what it is. The fans want particular things, and that's good because the readers are there and bringing them
Yes.
in to buying traditional books as well and getting it into, yeah, like the distribution and stuff and having the authors be supported. It's really important. It's great. Yes. So we'll go on to another question. Um, so we have noted before, I think we talked about this in our Christmas special for the first time, in that the way that in a lot of monster romance, you get quite a lot of cozy elements too, you know. Um, and like I absolutely loved the way that the kind of meet cute between them was the cookies, you know, cookies
Yeah.
that she might have poisoned,
Yeah.
but it was like, but it was kind of like you always say to me, don't you? Welcome to the dark side. We have cookies,
We have
and I
cookies.
thought it
Yeah.
was like, may I come to the dark side? I have cookies. So she was like offering them to him. Um, yeah, there's found family and like crafting and gardening and things like that. So yeah, why do you think those sort of themes tend to reoccur in monster romance?
Well, for me personally, I just need the balance. Like I like to lean in the dark and I have fun with it, but I can't stay there for very long. Like to be in
No.
that headspace can be very heavy. So
Mm.
I guess I kind of think of it as like emotional aftercare for
Yeah,
both
yeah.
reader and writer. I also just, like I love mashing up like scary with cute. Like I love giving terrifying characters like strangely endearing traits like Guderick's fluffy little tail.
I was literally just
Seriously, I
thinking of
was just
that.
giggling with that. Yeah, I walked away giggling. This little Bambi tail behind him.
So cute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly how I
yeah.
pictured it too. It's a
Yeah.
little Bambi tail.
Oh,
Um, and then like, the scene where he's just like daintily hold like this is not a teacup, but
Little
like
cup of
a
tea.
traditional
yeah,
little
little teacup.
teacup.
Hmm.
And he's just got it pinched between his claws and he's just like, his big old skull mouth and he's just pouring
Yeah. I
just
think
silly
that's
little
it,
things
isn't
like
it?
that.
It's like that balance of the light and the dark. So even like
Yeah.
the scariest monster still has, you know, little the touches of light as well. It's yeah.
Yeah, yeah, some humanizing qualities,
Yeah, exactly.
despite being a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, these things just make me absolutely giddy. But I also think, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with reader expectations and like what the market wants. I think monster romance writers also kind of have to woo the reader with monster romance. Like, why should we root for a protagonist that is terrifying, might eat me, probably will eat me?
Mm.
Uh, and instead of like having the reader go like, run, they're like
But
instead thinking like, if dangerous, why friend shaped?
yeah,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Run to be chased, maybe?
Yeah. No one's
That's
given
like the
him the
best.
opportunities. No one's offered him cookies before, so they never knew whether he would like cookies or not, you
That's
know.
right. What a charming little surprise.
Yes. Oh, bless him.
So
So
good.
talking about that and the monstery elements, let's just go straight into sex scenes, intimate scenes. They can be difficult to write, just generally. But when you put appendages and double this and many of that, how do you manage to keep track of what's going on with the height and the claws and the bones and the horns? How is there a way that you do it, or how does it
So
work?
I feel like maybe the hardest thing was maybe like considering, okay, his antlers and where they are spatially, like when he moves his head, like what is he gonna like smack into Asher? But it was also fun to have to think about that because you have to kind of use a little bit of imagination and creativity to like, okay, well, or maybe I should say it's more of like a speculative like thought experiment. Like, okay, like how would he accommodate the fact that like yeah, like when he lays down or is to go to sleep or like how does he like cushion his head or we also have a couple near misses where like he like swings his head and like
Yeah.
Astrid ducks
Whoa.
like she almost like gets clipped by his prongs. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't think I really found it all that difficult, like with regards to the anatomical features. Like I find them to be very fun. And like with Monster Romance, you kind of can just make stuff up
Mm.
to accommodate the scene and what's going on between characters. So like he's got a bone face, bone mouth. So like there's no there's no lips. So like how does he like other than and he also has claws. So like to accommodate Astrid and not like cutting her up
Yeah.
on accident, like he can retract his claws or like he has a really long tongue and it can also like it's naturally it's together, but like at a point it splits,
Mm-hmm.
divides and conquers.
Yeah. That's all you need.
So, you know, like but I imagine with other monsters like a tentacle monster, like if
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
they have like 10 tentacles. Like, is the reader really keeping track? Are you really counting, like, well, you used all 10, ma'am? Like,
Well, I think that's probably easier, isn't it, in some ways? Like,
yeah,
because I write contemporary as well as like paranormal, and like we were saying about keeping track of hands. Oh, how can they have a hand there when you've already said there's a
You've got a
hand
hand
there and a
there.
hand
Mm-hmm.
there? But if you've got tentacles, it's like, well, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
They can, you have many to play with. Absolutely. I love the way
um,
he used his claws like the back of them to kind of like
yeah,
that was because it was kind of like a tenderness thing as well and showing his thoughtfulness. So I guess you're so far into his character because of his physiology as well. They must make it a bit easier to stick with it in those intimate
yeah,
scenes too.
because it's always on my mind. I honestly, I think the hardest thing with writing intimacy scenes is the emotions, like in making something like because like the mechanics of it you got to make it sound pretty. You got to make it
Mm,
like you got to make the reader feel it here too. Um yeah, here and here. So like honestly, like all the sensory details and just like the careful crafting that goes into that, like that's where I struggle. Like
yeah.
and it's kind of similar with like writing fight scenes too
Yeah.
because it's like again very mechanical. It's like and then he swung the sword and they're
But
like how do you make
why
that
do you
sound
care?
interesting
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
before
Yeah, yeah. That's it. Why are they
and
scared at this moment, or why do they do that at that moment? You got to feel inside the character to care. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just figures moving around, isn't it? On a page.
yeah
I was going to say on a screen. The screen's in my head.
Yes.
But yeah.
yeah yeah
In your head
yeah
screen.
Yeah.
yeah so like yeah to make it interesting you can't just be like and then they thrust again and again and again and
Yeah,
again
yeah.
like
Yeah, it's that
so
thing of like reality is not as exciting as fiction, really,
Yeah.
is it? You know?
Yeah.
If you're too accurate, you have to like, yeah, pepper it in with something. The blend of everything, isn't it? All the fantastical elements, the emotion, and what's actually happening.
yeah exactly
Yeah. We kind of talked a little bit before about winter when we were talking about like the folkloric elements and stuff. And I think like I love that feeling throughout the whole thing, the cold and all the snow. And like you were saying about like the survival thing with her garden and how it's not easy when the ground's hard and stuff like that. But it's also so it's like beautiful and deadly, isn't it? Like winter. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous, the snow, but yeah, but personally, don't really want to walk in it for very long. Um, what's your favorite season? Is winter your favorite season, or is it another time of year?
So I'm more of a mild weather
Mhm.
girly. I like spring and autumn, but I do find winter beautiful, like particularly after like fresh fall and snow and just when
Mm.
everything is kind of glittering and magical, especially at night when like the world is quiet
Yeah.
and like there's no cars on the road and you just look out the window and everything is blanketed in it.
Mm.
I find that very beautiful, very peaceful. But again, it's like from the outside, like sorry, from the inside looking out, like within
Yeah.
the comfort of like safety, like it's very lovely. But yeah, no, like the whole nature is beautiful, but it's also deadly. Like that's throughout nature. It's not just winter time. It's something that I like to focus in a lot of my books. Like in Given to the Ghoul, it was the desert. You get this
Mm.
beautiful like desert flower and like cacti like landscape, but it's scorching dry heat. And so like why did I set this in winter? Well, one, it was because I had always just envisioned Astrid as like a murderous Elsa.
Yeah.
Um, and then
There we
also
go.
and then also like her mother, Perkta, is a um figure in Alpine folklore, and she's kind of like a Christmas witch. And also some consider her to be like a female counterpart to Krampus because
Mm.
she comes around during Christmas, Yule time and, you know, goes door to door and she's got her own like reward the good, punish the bad thing going. Um, so that also made it important to set it
Yeah.
in winter. And to be honest, like, too, I've been kind of hopping, like, from book to book, I've been kind of hopping like seasons
Yeah.
and settings. Like one book series is set in the ocean. Given to the Ghoul is in the desert. Follow Me to the Yew Tree is like on the English moors. So like it's so I don't have to describe the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Going
this is
back to
it.
the like, and then there were trees and more trees, or and then there was water and more water. Like after a
Yeah.
while, you know, you got to change it up. So like this was the first time I've written in the winter setting, and that was really cool
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that
That's
too.
brilliant.
A
I was
nice
like, yeah,
break.
yeah. I was like, I did like the fact that that her mum was in there because Krampus has been around a lot over the last
Yeah.
few years with monsters and the stuff. That Krampus is the big thing. And God, we went to watch, was it Red One with my kids and Krampus was in there. So to have a female version of that was just fantastic to read as well. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and over in the United States, we hear about Krampus, like we know about Krampus, but like until a few years ago, I think like probably like 2021 is when I first learned about Perkta. And I'm German American, and I no, like did not grow up knowing who Perkta was, which is
Yeah.
like that's a shame.
Yeah,
She's
yeah. She's
very
fantastic.
Although I did inadvertently
scary.
tell my kids about Krampus, and my youngest is still obviously a believer of Santa, and it was like kind of this thing, oh shit, am I this is something that people believing, but it's also a myth. How am I navigating this? I don't want her to be terrified that Krampus is gonna come. You know, it's like it's quite hard. But yeah, you can see the origins of all of that, the naughty and the nice list at the end of the day. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's
then
right
leaving
there.
out cookies for Santa
Yeah, yeah.
or
Love it.
Saint Nick.
Yeah, exactly.
No, actually, even that is deeply rooted in tradition. So, like her giving Springerle
Hmm.
to Gooderiks, it's an image cookie. It's like it, and it's not just in Germany. I think it's across Europe and other parts of the world. People of like ancient times would give image cookies as token offerings or sacrifices to their
Yeah.
gods if they could not afford to sacrifice their livestock. So like
Mm.
that's why a lot of the cook I mean today less so, but like a lot of those image cookies in the past like had like animal motifs or like plant motifs because it was representing what was meant to be sacrificed. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I'd have
like,
no chance of catching a rabbit, so it would be biscuits all round from me.
Biscuits all yeah.
same.
And probably not pretty ones either.
No.
I'm not sure I'd survive, to be honest.
No.
I'm much more of a like, as long as it tastes good type of
Yeah.
baker.
Yeah,
Can you
turning it
imagine
round.
like I don't know, Parkta or Goodreeks picking up the cookie and being like, "Is this supposed to be a sheep?
Yeah.
This looks like a
Like a donkey?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like what is this?"
Yeah, just eat it. It tastes
Yeah.
nice. Not the poisoned one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is next? You've done your seasons, you've done your monsters. Are we still on the monster trail? Where are we going next?
We're going to a bog.
Oh.
So my next self-published title, it's The Feast of Dead Man's Hollow. It was originally a short story that I published in an anthology, but the rights have reverted back to me, so I've expanded it a little bit. And it's a romance, of course, but it also is a mashup of two classic horror stories, or at least they're classic over in the States. But I don't really want to spoil what those two stories are because because like if I just say what they are, it's a spoiler.
Okay.
So I got to keep that a secret, but I can say that if readers like things like clumsy cinnamon roll heroes who are trying to engage in eco activism and then kind of just do it badly.
We were on about excellent marketing earlier, and that is the
Yes.
perfect example of it.
Yeah. This is it.
You know, like you're trying to save the bog from some commercial real estate developers who are trying to drain the project to build like a fancy bougie like resort for the ultra rich. And you're like trucking along, you think you know what you're doing, and oop, fallen and need rescue. But yeah, it's also got so Theodore is the male main character. He is a short king, and then Arduina, who's the female main character, is a muscle mommy, and she's the supernatural element. And I can't say what she is.
Lovely. When do you think you're going to have that out by?
I'm hoping spooky spring.
Oh,
nice.
I mean,
is
spooky
spring a thing? I've not come across this.
Should be.
Is it
should be.
It isn't like a horror romance monster.
Okay.
Well, horror romance, horror genre.
Yeah.
Folk. The Halloween lives in our soul, 24/7, 365. So I'm like spooky spring, spooky summer.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
You know,
all the spooky times.
Yeah, it's got to be done.
Definitely.
Not just for Christmas.
Okay. I think that's all our questions for Untethering Dark for this episode. But you'll be back joining us in episode 3 to talk about a book that has influenced you very much. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll
Thank you
speak
for
to you
having
again.
me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. And we'll speak to you again soon.